नमस्कार, प्रणाम आप सभी को। कुरुओम स्कूल ऑफ एडवांस साइंसेस जो अमेरिका स्थित इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ एडवांस साइंसेस का भारतीय प्रक्रम है, भारतीय प्रकल्प है। वहां पर हर महीने हम लोग यहाँ उपस्थित होते हैं KSAS टॉक के माध्यम से, जिसमें विज्ञान, दर्शन, संस्कृत, समाज, साहित्य, अलग अलग विधाओं के विद्वान हमारे बीच उपस्थित होते हैं और उनको लेकर हम लोग सार्थक चर्चा करते हैं। आज हम लोगों के बीच में उपस्थित हैं डॉक्टर यशवंत पाठक। Dr. Yashwant Pathak completed his Ph.D. in Pharmaceutical Technology from India and EMBA and MS Conflict Management from Sullivan University, USA. He is Associate Dean for Faculty Affairs College of Pharmacy, University of South Florida, Tampa, Florida. He has written so many books, research articles in nanotechnology, in books in cultural studies, and so many research articles also. The basic thing today's topic is world, ancient culture and tradition, similarities and challenges. प्रारंभ के मानव विकास के साथ साथ सभ्यताओं का विकास हुआ और सभ्यताओं के विकास में आपसी सद्भाव कैसे बने और आपस में कॉन्फ्लिक्ट्स क्या रहे, इनको लेकर आगे जब मानव सभ्यता बढ़ी तो विकास के आज हम 21वीं सदी तक पहुंच चुके हैं। हचिंगटन लिखता है कि अगला जो विश्व युद्ध होगा वह सभ्यताओं के संघर्ष का विश्व युद्ध होगा। तो सभ्यताओं में संघर्ष क्यों उत्पन्न हो रहा है? आपस में सभ्यताएं एक साथ मिलकर कैसे रह सकती? मल्टीकल्चरिज्म की जो अवधारणा है उसमें सभ्यताओं का अपना अस्तित्व कैसे बन के रह सकता है, ये सारी बातें निश्चित रूप से काफी अनुकरणीय है और इस पर व्यापक विचार विमर्श की आवश्यकता है। प्रारंभिक काल से ही वैश्विक पुरानी बड़ी बड़ी सभ्यताएं, मेसोपोटामिया की सभ्यता रही, भारतीय हड़प्पा की सभ्यता रही, ईका, माया, हैशटैग, चीनी सभ्यता, बहुत सारी सभ्यताएं रही। सभ्यताओं के कुछ अपने बेसिक गुणधर्म होते हैं और उन गुणधर्म आपस में अलग अलग सभ्यताओं से जुड़े रहते हैं। तो एक और अनूठी बात ये निकल के आती है कि सभ्यताएं आपस में कनेक्ट है। तो संघर्ष क्यों है? इस महत्वपूर्ण मुद्दे पर बात करने के लिए, अपने विचार रखने के लिए और हम सबके विचारों को शांत करने के लिए हम सबके बीच में डॉक्टर यशवंत पाठक हैं। बिना किसी फॉर्मेलिटीज को आपको डॉक्टर यशवंत पाठक, आपको हम आमंत्रित करते हैं आज के KSAS टॉक के लिए। ओवर टू यू सर।
भैया, प्रथमतः बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद कुरुओम स्कूल ऑफ एडवांस स्टडीज को और सारी आप लोगों की जो टीम है। पहले तो आपने जो प्रास्ताविक किया उससे तो मैं पूरा डर गया हूँ, कारण आपने कहा था कि आप बड़े बड़े विद्वान लोगों को बुलाते हैं और मैं तो उस कैटेगरी में बैठता नहीं हूँ, इसलिए जो भी गलतियां होगी उसे माफ कर देना। लेकिन विद्वान की कैटेगरी में बलराम जी और बाकी सब बड़े बड़े लोग बैठते हैं, हम लोग सामान्य स्वयंसेवक है। But anyway, I'm going to start. I would like to create a image in front of all of you. It's early dawn now. It is early. We are still outside. It is dark here. A person comes out of his hut and takes water in his hand and then looks at the sun and offers the water to the sun and says that, "Oh God, sun, give us that much heat which is necessary for our sustenance, and remaining heat you calm down with this water." Now you must be imagining that this must be a scenario happening on the banks of Ganges in Patna, or because I heard about Patna, that's why I said Patna, but or Haridwar or Rishikesh. But this is happening in Africa. It is very interesting to see that the world had many ancient traditions. If you go to African continent, they have over 1,000 African traditions and cultures. They have independent existence. There are Xhosas, there are Kikuyus, Masais, Asante, there are Yorubas, and every African country has a cultural group or a traditional group which have distinct cultural practices. They have distinct their clothing. I am wearing something, I don't know, you cannot see fully, but I am wearing something which is made from a Guatemala Mayan tradition costume. But so Africa had, they have 1,000 languages. They have different ways of thinking, and they have developed their sacraments. They have developed their way of life, and that is where I am going to discuss about it. So if you go to American continent has got over 500 nations. They call it 500 nations, and nowadays in the modern system they call it nation within the nation. So you have Sioux, you have Haudenosaunee, you have uh, Mayas, Incas, Aztecs, and there are 500 nations which were flourishing when Columbus first time arrived. And before that, the Vikings from Netherlands, they arrived in United States. So these are 500 nations. Now each of these nations have a distinct culture. They have their own way of costume, they have their own way of, their languages are there, their ways of worshipping are there. Like that, if you go to Australia, Australian Aboriginals, they constitute around 14 main traditions and cultures in Australian Aboriginals. And you go further down, it is New Zealand, where you have Maoris, who are one of the role models for all the ancient traditions around the world, and I am going to tell you why it is role model. And then you come to the rest of the Europe, you'll find that there are Asatrus and Druids and Romuads and Ramawas, and there are every European country. I am also part of that organization which is called as World Council of Ethnic Religions of European Religions, and it is an umbrella body of almost 25, 26 European country organizations which are reviving and practicing the pagan traditions in Europe. So it is very interesting to see that how all these traditions are coming back and why they are coming back and what role they can play in the world order. Nowadays they use the word called world order, and this is where we will have some insight or discussion about these ancient traditions and cultures of the world. So one of the commonalities I would like to have share some commonalities with these ancient traditions around the world. Right at the onset, I would like to tell you that world used to believe lot of common things. You can easily call them as Sanatana Dharma or Manava Dharma or whatever you would like to call them. A name doesn't matter. But there were traditions, they used to believe in God. And God was not gender biased. So all these traditions had gods and goddesses. There was a equal respect and equal presence of male as well as female gods. Unfortunately, the world was divided into two sections called believers and non-believers, and suddenly the world was bipolar. Believers in my God and my God only, and my way of worship and my way of practice, and you have no right to survive or you have no right to live. And that's where the conflict started, and we have seen that millions and millions of people belonging to these ancient traditions and cultures lost their lives. It is a great history of resistance by all these people. Unfortunately, there is a beautiful, it expresses very well. There is a Kenyan African proverb which says that if the lions start writing the history of hunting, the history of hunting will be different. And the same thing happens that the indigenous ancient traditions of all these countries and all these areas of the world, if they start writing about the history, then you'll see a very different history of the world. For example, just to put one small example, I will say Ethiopian king. Ethiopia is one of the country in Africa, and Ethiopian king defeated 17 times the French army, not one or two, but 17 times. And last time when it came to an agreement, the French cheated and they used a different agreement in the French language and different agreement statement in the Ethiopian language. And in the French language, they said that Ethiopian king accepts the sovereignty of France, and French army will protect the Ethiopian king afterwards. And this is where they cheated, and that's how the Ethiopian lost. Otherwise, same thing happens if you go to when the Europeans visited Asante kingdom in Ghana. They found it that Asante kingdom was much ahead and very well developed as compared to what type of development was there existing in Europe. And they, even today, if you meet any Asante elder, he wears a cap with a lot of gold and probably his staff, which he has to sit on a, we call it simhasan, or they call it a throne. And that throne is, even today, I have seen that it is made up of gold, pure gold. And when the elder sits on that throne, whatever words come out of his throne, they are considered to be God's words, and people follow it. So this type of existing traditions were around the world. Unfortunately, world divided into two parts, and then believers were, I think the revolution means the things happened because of the gun. If it would have been one-to-one fighting, probably the ancient traditions would have won the wars. But anyway, so the commonalities are very great in all these traditions. First thing is that the concept of God. Concept of God is absolutely omnipotent, omniscient, and existing everywhere. And that is why there is a beautiful book I will strongly recommend you all to read about African traditions and religions, written by John Beatty, where he says that Africans carry the God everywhere. Even if they go to school, they carry the God. Even if they go to the farm, they carry the God. And when I started reading that book, African Traditions and Religions, I thought, hey, I'm reading absolutely a Indian philosophy or Bharatiya Vichar or Indian thoughts, because they were so similar. We also, in India, if you want to put the plow in the season, the first thing you do is you pray to the God and pray to Mother Earth. And same thing happens in African tradition, that many of the African traditions do not use plow because they think that you cannot cut through the heart of Mother Earth. And even today they don't use it. It's very interesting to see the relationship between the Mother Earth and all these ancient traditions around the world. So the concept of God is very similar in all of them. They have gods and goddesses. You will see nowadays there are a lot of information available on webs and in electronic media, and you have several pictures of the mother statues, and there are very interesting role the mothers play in the lives of all the ancient traditions around the world. They have a very specific role, and they contribute significantly to the maintenance of the culture. Like mother, they call it Nana in Ghana, Asante, they call it Nana, and then Nana is considered to be one of the very respected personality, and they are very respected. Even today, it is very interesting to see that in Kenya and in some of the African areas, there is definitely a violence. But and I have gone to Africa so many times, so many countries, and I talk to our Indian people who are settled there, and they say that the Africans, if they are at home, they will never ever bother the women folk. They will always make sure that they won't bother them. They have respect for them, and this is where the interesting aspect is there. And you see these things in most of the traditions around the world. The concept of God is very interesting, female God, male God. So that is the distinction between the Abrahamic religion. The second thing which all these traditions have is a human relationship with God. And all of these traditions never needed any mediator. They never wanted anybody in between the God and themselves. And that is where the whole development of these ancient traditions around the world before the Christianity was based on trust. And they thought that every person who is born will have to undergo different types of sacraments. In Bharat, we call them sola samskaras. And these sacraments, in some or other form, are existing in all the ancient traditions around the world. You will find them in Africa, they are there, in Native American, they are there. They may not be 16 because we had Indians had developed some of the things in a much better way. But there are sacraments, and at every stage of life, the sacraments have been offered. And then the sacraments don't stop at the death, but they continue even after the death. And that is where the concept of ancestors exists there. So the human relationship with God is expressed by all the ancient traditions around the world from many different countries, even if it is Australian Aboriginal or a African or a Native American. If they would like to go to pray the God or whatever area they designate for prayers to the God, they will never go empty handed. In America, most of the temples have challenges how to dispose of the fruits, because every uh, Hindu who goes to the temple always carries a lot of fruits, give something to the God in exchange of getting something from the God. Uh, I don't know, I should not use the word bribing, but it expresses correctly that you have a human relationship with God. If you are in trouble, then God has to help you, and it's a human relationship. So I give something, I get something. And that's where this human relationship of the God is very common. And that's why realization of the God is considered to be very important in all the ancient traditions. All over the world, I met many. I am fortunate enough to travel over 100 countries and met many areas. My recent trip was in Colombia, and I visited the remotest part of the northern Colombia in the hills, where I had opportunity to stay in Hilton Hotel, which is like a hut, and you get AC because outside air and inside air are same. And I stayed in hammock. I slept on hammock. That was my Hilton hotel bed. And the people whom I met, they were all Korawak Native Americans, never converted to Christianity. They were practicing the original Native American concepts, traditions, culture, and they are totally against the technological development. They say that this technological development is not good for humanity. It is unbelievably clear idea about what is good for humanity and what is bad for humanity. So all those villages I visited, they don't adopt any modern technologies, TV or cell phone or anything. They have their own ways of communicating, and they have their own ways of doing it. They create their own clothes. They have their own rice and everything, and it's very interesting to see that if you probably calculate the happiness index, they might be more happier than people staying in United States. I just want to share this because I saw their happiness and it was great. So the concept of God, human relationship with God, and third thing is the ancestors worship. We have a very wonderful conference. I hope Dr. Balramji will be able to attend. It is in Dibrugarh, and I would like to invite all of you to please go and see. We already have 300 delegates and representing 40 different countries. They will be there. And the concept of this conference is sustainability through these ancient traditions and cultures. And you will be able to see some of the good people because I just met some people from Colombia and at least 3 elders from Colombia are visiting. So you'll be able to see ancient traditions of the world in reality without getting converted to Christianity. So this in the interesting system in these ancient traditions, and especially in Africans, is called ancestor worships. And they have 2 types of ancestors. One is called living ancestors, other is called dead ancestors. If we consider our lives, you will find that you are influenced by your great grandfather and great grandmother, because the great grandfather influences the grandfather, grandfather influences your father, and your father influences you. So you are influenced by 3 generations before you, and you are going to influence 3 generations after you. So the cycle of influence within the generation stays in 7 generations. That's what the Africans believe. And that's why they say that 3 generations before, we call them living ancestors. And in my tradition, I don't know, in our Maharashtra, when I perform the Shraddha for my father, I invite this soul or spirit or whatever you would like to call it, but I invoke my father because he's no more, my grandfather with the name, and then my great grandfather. So 3 generations I invoke, and I offer them the Pindadanam, and then I go to the origin of my, they call it Gotra. So I am from Kashyap Gotra. So I invite the spirit of Rishi Kashyap. So same thing in African tradition they do. When they do the worship for ancestors, they invite these 3 living ancestors with their names, and then they invite all my ancient ancestors should be there, because it is a way of giving or expressing gratitude toward the ancestors. And recently, there is a wonderful person in Trinidad and Tobago. His name is Ravindra Maharaj. So he has started a program called Ancestor Worshipping, and he invites all the Africans as well as Hindus, and they put the pictures of their father, grandfather, great grandfather if available, and then do this in Sarvapitri Amasya. And we are trying to find out if we can declare the 15 days of the Pitrupaksha Pandarwada as the ancestor remembrance and worship day all over, because that can connect all the ancient traditions of the world, because most of the people express gratitude toward the ancestors. So ancestors worship is one of the commonality in all these ancient traditions. Then there is the interesting thing which is observed in these ancient traditions. It is strong families. I had a friend who I used to be in Israel, and I had a colleague who was also pediatrician. So he used to make fun that when his great 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 grandfather actually was alive and he was 105 years old. So he said that when he sits on the chair in the family, nobody sits on the chair, because he is honored as the senior most family member. So rest of the people, his 90 years old will stand, then 60 years old grandson will stand, and that way they all will be respecting them. And the respect for elders, respect for seniors is exemplary in this tradition. They take care of them. It is very interesting to see that. There was an interesting joke I would like to share with you, because one of the white men talked to the Native Americans. Hey, what is this? You call them elders, elders, elders. What is this concept of elders? So the Native American, they are very witty people. Most of these Africans, Native Americans, ancient tradition people are very witty because they use proverbs in their life. The more proverbs you use, you will be more witty because proverbs are something which tells the wisdom in few words. And this is again all over the world. The proverbs of these ancient traditions are very powerful. And it is so interesting that the family concept is strong. And then the white man was asking Native Americans, what is elder? And he said, look, guys, you become older and useless to the society. We become older and become elder because we carry the flame of the culture. We carry the wisdom of the culture, and we communicate and transfer this wisdom to the next generation because we believe in oral tradition. And this is another commonality in all the ancient traditions, that most of them are orally transferred from one generation to the other generation. And interestingly, the knowledge flows from a knowledgeable person to a less knowledgeable person. To just understand that, Arjuna was confused, and it took Bhagwan Sri Krishna to provide him 18 chapters to remove the confusion. Even today also probably we may need 35, 40 chapters for our community to remove the confusion. I'm sorry to say that. But so the information has transferred from a very knowledgeable person like Krishna to Arjuna in the form of dialogue. And all the ancient traditions around the world depend on dialogue. There is always a dialogue between a knowledgeable person and less knowledgeable person. And in many cases, in many traditions, they use animals, and the animals provide the knowledge to the human being. We have Panchatantra Kathas. We have many such stories in our traditions also. So this oral tradition is a tradition which was existing in all the ancient traditions, and obvious reasons. But now it is very interesting. I recently came across a book called African Epistemology. And the Western world tried to dump all these ancient traditions as pagan traditions, having no knowledge system, having nothing which can be shared. And that's why they were saying that it is a black burden. Africa is a black burden on the world. Am I making any? Am I okay to continue? Okay.
You are okay. Okay. Good.
Yeah. So the epistemology, Western epistemology, absolutely got rid of all these ancient traditions. And now they are saying that, we have our own knowledge system. We have our own way of life, and we have our own ways to dissipate the knowledge. And a beautiful book that African epistemology is probably first time I saw that. And it is absolutely giving a great details about how the Africans conceptual development of human being, what is the mission of the human being, and how they interpret all these things. It's a very beautiful book. And then there is another book which I have, is a beauty of the African thoughts, and that also creates it's an excellent book which talks about original development models to be created based on African epistemology. And I was so impressed with these two books. And one thing which we will understand very quickly is the concept of Ubuntu. In Africa, they call it Ubuntu, means I am here because of you, and you are here because of me. And it's same thing can be translated into our epistemology, where we say koham, who am I? We try to find out, and finally ultimately come down to aham brahmasmi and tvam tattvamasi. So the same thing exists in the African traditions and many other traditions in different ways. It may not be exactly translated, but then in different ways their understanding was different, and that's why the African proverbs are very powerful. The African proverb, one of the Igbo, there is a Igbo tradition, IGBO. It says that even the blade of grass cannot move its head without the permission of the God. And this is the proverb. They say you don't have to show the God to the child. Child has to realize the God. So realization has to come. It is, you can create an environment for realization, but it is the effort of the human being who will be able to realize. It is impossible unless the human being wants to realize about God, then only it will happen. Nobody can, you can create a way for them, but it is the effort. And that same thing happens. And that's why the African proverbs are very powerful. Most of the Native Americans also, they have very beautiful proverbs. So this relationship, a concept of God, relationship with God, a strong family, ancestor worship, and then they come down to a very interesting topic which is known as birth and rebirth. In our concept, we say that we get rid of the body, we just do the cremation, because once the soul is gone, everything is gone, and the body doesn't. Even in America also, it is same thing. They don't bring the body to home; they put it in funeral home. Nobody wants the dead body, because once the soul has gone, there is nothing remaining there, and that's where. So the Indians developed a different way of getting rid of the body. In other traditions, it's very interesting. The death ceremonies are absolutely very interesting in all these different traditions. In Ghana, if somebody dies, uh, that is related with the birth and rebirth concept, and that's where I would like to tell you that in Ghana, when somebody dies, the whole clan has to come for the funeral ceremony. Same thing in Maoris. In Maoris, if somebody dies in the village, if every member of that village has to visit the house where the death has happened, if you don't go, the Maoris outcast you. Because death is the time when we need everyone around us. And that's where death ceremonies are so important. In all these ancient traditions, they have almost similar type of thought processes what we have as a dharma or a Sanatan traditions. Exactly similar type of something. Some minor changes will be there, but in Maori people, for 10 days they don't cook. If the death has happened in the family, then that family will not cook, and rest of the village will come and provide the food to all of them. This happens in India also. In our area, it is very common that, and then those who attend the funeral, it is on 14th of day, we invite all of them and provide little bit of sweet or laddu and all those things, and then we say that, okay, the soul has departed to the next world, and let us continue with our work. Similar type of death ceremonies are happening in almost all the ancient traditions. And I have a friend whose name is Dr. Frank Tedesco, and Frank has done some phenomenal videos. You can look it on YouTube about the death ceremonies of different cultures, and it's very interesting. This is the Western world created a lot of counseling, this, that, and all the thing. We do the counseling as part of our daily life, and that becomes very easy to do it. And these death ceremonies are related with the birth and rebirth concept. For example, in Australian Aboriginals, they say that the every child, when the child is conceived, the parents of the child, the husband, wife, the parents of the mother, and parents of the father, so one of these 6 parents, they get a dream, and in that dream they get identify what clan this baby belongs to. And it is interesting that they have Baramundi fish, they call it Baramundi fish. They have magpie clan, they have different clans. And once that dream comes, then all the family will sit together and then assign that baby which is going to be born to that particular clan. Once that baby is assigned to a particular clan, then that baby will never marry the person from the same clan. And purity of relationship is absolutely practiced. I heard the similar type of purity of relationship is also practiced in northeastern region also. In many of our northeastern ancient tradition, they practice this. Same thing, the Australian Aboriginal do it. And once the clan is decided, then the child will grow as the member of that clan, and once the death comes, the clan, the soul which exists in that child will go back to the clan spirit. And this is how that spirit will come back in another baby. And this is how they have a cyclic lifestyle, birth and rebirth cycles are there. Interestingly, in African traditions, in one of the traditions, the serpent eating its tail is a symbol of cyclic lifestyle. If you see in India also, this symbol is used for cyclic lifestyle. So the cycles are continuous, and it is now scientifically it is proven that our cells die in 7 to 14 days, and we have continuous birth and rebirth going on at a cellular and molecular level in our body. And that's where the birth and rebirth concept is practiced in. It appears in different ways, but they all believe that there is something which exists in the human body or creation of the God, animals, plants, and everything. And that is where once that spirit has gone, then death occurs and the body is useless. And this is where the commonality is that existence and recognition of the soul which remains in every creation leads to a fantastic statement which our Bharatiyas or our forefathers in India have done, is Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. We without blinking our eyes, we say for the betterment of the well-being, for the betterment and well-being of everyone. In exactly similar thought processes are there in Native American. They call bird people, the stone people, the animal people. So they refer to all these creation as people because they are part of the creation. They are part of the bhutas, and we all need to contribute towards the sarva bhute hite rataha. And sarva bhute hite rataha exists in probably many of our scriptures. It is in Bhagavad Gita, several times came. In Ramayana it is there, in Mahabharata it is there. It's very beautiful concept. And that's where once we understand this concept, sarva bhuta hite rataha, it will definitely lead to less and less conflicts within the world. And I think that is very important. I just want to put some challenges, as I mentioned in my title. So all these ancient traditions are facing some challenges. First thing is that most of them got converted forcibly, and they want to practice their own tradition, but it is very difficult. So you will find that I attended one practice of the Italian pagan tradition. It happens at 12 o'clock in the night, because it is, and most of the people will cover white things so that it is nobody will know that they are practicing their pagan tradition. So there was a resistance, and there was a attacks on all these people. So now the world is changing, and the world is understanding that the one book, one Masiha, and one thing will never work, because Christianity itself has 172 sects, and every day they come up with new sects, and they are very strong sects. They don't recognize each other. Same thing happens with Islam, and same thing is all Abrahamic religions have these challenges, and they are going to face. A day will come when the ancient traditions are going to be reviving and telling the world that world believes in diversity. World needs diversity. Without the diversity, the world will be ending. it is impossible to survive. And these are the challenges. Because of the oral history, now we always think that if it is not written in the book or not published in the journal, then there is no evidence for it. And this is where the challenges are there. So I like the African approach, African epistemology. They are recognizing that oral history is an authentic knowledge creation system, and they are going to, the world will have to recognize it today, tomorrow, or day after tomorrow. But world has to recognize these are the challenges they are facing. The number is another thing. But nowadays, if you look at the total number, they say through the United Nations website, they say around 400 million people who are practicing these ancient traditions around the world. So the number is growing. And nowadays it is very interesting that the Western world is also understanding that there are different ways. Ekam sat vipraha bahuda vadanti, so different ways are there. They manifest in different ways. So obviously we need to recognize that a human being can reach the God with different ways. Most of the ancient traditions accept it. Now it is time for the rest of the world to understand that this is to be done. So they have several challenges, but I just wanted to share a few of them. My time is almost over. I'm going to tell you the last story, and then I will stop. It's a beautiful saying by the Native Americans. They say that one of the Native American elder told that if you want to talk to God, go to a secluded place and meditate. A time comes when you understand the music of the water flowing through the streams. A time comes when you understand the language of the bird they talk amongst each other. A time comes when you understand the music of the breeze flowing through the woods. And the best way to talk to God is keep yourself mum. The moment you start talking, God stops talking. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time, and I hope I could share something with you. I didn't use any PowerPoint presentation or anything because it is a oral tradition.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pathak, and it was very interesting to listen you, and it was like a story, a beautiful story we were listening, and thank you for this beautiful presentation. Now I will request the President of INADS, Professor Balram Singh sir, for his comment on today's presentation.
If you have any questions, I'm open to answer.
Yeah, maybe I have a question answer. You want me to say something later?
Yeah, but first your comment, then we will take some questions from the audience.
Well, this is beautiful. I know, of course, Yashwantji for a long time, and the only a great man calls other people great. So can you imagine that what he was saying? This is just his greatness that he considers himself to be so humble. He has been very sincere, very authentic, very dedicated, practical person of what he's talking about today. And he has collaborated with many people, written many aspects of it. Some of it you gave me in the introduction. He's a pharmacology or pharmaceutics or his field of research, drug delivery and other things, but he has also involved nutrition type of work in his career, and where he collaborated with many, including us. We have written sometimes for him, and we are still writing some of those things for him. But the most important thing is I was exposed to him in Mysore actually once, where there were 40 countries representative, and I think he didn't talk about it today, but there was a discussion about fire. How every culture believes in fire, and around fire they do all their worshipping. I have some critical questions, of course, but I wouldn't, not in this commentary, but particularly maybe one question I can ask, that why is oral? He emphasized this oral tradition, and he said he practices also oral tradition, but why oral? It will be an interesting thing, because there are certain aspects of oral tradition. It may not be just the words, it may be the expression. In Sanskrit they call it abhivakti. That defined a vyakti. which means an individual is defined by the Abhivyakti, and Abhivyakti is not limited to only words, but also to gestures and expressions of many kinds that happens in your face, in your body, and other things. And I think that's very symbolic. Like he was talking about, many things are taken very symbolically. So I'll just maybe make just one critical comments. Maybe he can address when he starts addressing some of these things. But it has been wonderful to hear him and learn. I will share this video with some of my colleagues who are from Africa. I particularly also want to go myself to Africa, because I think there is so much thing that perhaps came from Africa to India also, when humans migrated, as far as the science is concerned. So I think with those words, I would like to thank him again to take this trouble with very relatively short notice, so early in the morning for him to share his very wise and appreciative thoughts. Thank you.
May I
Thank
ask
you, sir.
this? May I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yeah, yes, please.
Thank you. That's a very, very interesting lecture and very informative in very many ways, very substantive. And you know what I'm wondering at is that, okay, of course it was a oral tradition, but there was a dialogue in the tradition. So it was a dialogic kind of a thing in which there was a inter-traditional dialogue and intra-traditional dialogue in two ways, that the traditions have been interacting within themselves and also with other traditions outside. So this was the way that they tried to disseminate the knowledge, you know, from one community to another community, from one generation to another generation, and of course from one individual to another individual. So collectivity was there. So what Dr. Pathak has placed before us, I just want to know the kind of method they had used to preserve that knowledge system. Of course, you can keep it in the memory, but memory as a human centric will not last long. It has to be given transfer to the next generation. So what was the modality? What was the method? The way they tried to disseminate it, you know, from one generation to another generation of the same clan, tribe, community, or from one community to another community and to their kind of identity and everything else. So unless we spell it out, these nitty-gritty things, the methodological aspects, things will remain only fancy for us. They look nice, they're okay, they are sweet, they are fables, tales and stories with value loaded and everything, but we do not know how to preserve it so that it can be disseminated to everywhere. So what was the method? The orality is not orality is an excuse. I do not give any much credit to it, except that it is oral tradition. So oral tradition basically means a dialogue, dissemination of knowledge, then accumulation of that wisdom, and how to develop it. What is the argumentative tradition, and everything else. So I would like to have little more reflection from Dr. Pathak on this theme. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Over to you, Dr. Rajkumar.
You know, I'll ask a very simple question. When you have a marriage in your family, whom you contact? You look for your grandmother or some senior person from the family and ask, भाई शादी में क्या क्या करना है, कैसे करना है, क्या क्या करना है, and most of the people follow the same thing, and that exactly happens in all the life. जब death भी होता है घर में, so there are some senior citizens who walk in and they tell us, oh, I remember, I used to be in Nagpur, and one of our person, he is no more now, but we were tying the dead body on the bamboos, and he was saying, अरे तुम लोग को सीखोगे नहीं तो मेरे को कौन बांधेगा? These are the things which have to go from generation to generation. And they cannot be, even if you write hundreds of books and have hundreds of YouTube videos, that cannot be practiced. So it is simply a practice. And that practice goes from generation to generation, and 99.9% of the time, unless that person, as Balramji was asking me about the oral traditions, when you talk, it comes out of your heart. And if it is coming out of your heart, then you are practicing it. If it doesn't come out of your heart, then you have never practiced it. So you will find that some of the great people in Bharat, and it is a practice in Bharat, I think, I don't know, but we never ever have notes and all those things. We just go and talk because we have experienced it. So a culture is something which you have to experience it. Culture is not something which you can put it on the PowerPoint presentation or, in the modern context of epistemology. That is absolutely a Western thought, and I don't think all the Western thoughts are good. I am very much in West, and I believe in that. So the oral traditions have to be continued. If they do not continue, human will extinct in due course of time. Second thing is that unless you practice, and we are facing this problem everywhere, that the parents are not practicing some of the cultural traditions, and now there is a problem because there is nobody to tell us how to do the puja and how to do these things, and this is the problem for many of these ancient traditions there. So I think rather than going in that direction of documenting and putting it into the system and have many books on that, academic, I am an academician, but there is the importance of that. But I think unless it is practiced, like Vedas, there are Veda Pathshalas, they spend 12 years of their life just to chant in a particular fashion. And that is how Vedas survived for thousands of years. And that's where I think it is technology. And I'm now, I work in a medical field where a day will come that patients will not trust the doctor because they trust their iPhones. A doctor, if he is going to keep on watching the iPhones and looking at the pages flipping, you will not trust that doctor. You need a doctor who really has taken care of hundreds of patients and he understands it. And this is where there is a tug of war going on, and I am for the oral systems. We need to build up oral traditions. I still remember from 1 to 100, I can chant all the maths. The younger generation asks for the calculators, and I don't know what will happen subsequently. My great-grandmother, my grandmother I have seen, she used to do pauki and adhi and all those things. So 1/4 she used to calculate, and it was very interesting to see the kind of maths she had. We lost that. And I think there is a need for going back to look at the importance of these things in human life and humanity and look for it. It might be useful at some point somewhere. And I was wondering, because the Colombian people are very happy without iPhone, without technology. They do their own thing, then they say, hey, we don't need it. What is the concept of development has to probably rethink about it, because we have people who stay, I always make a joke that we have people in Manhattan who stay on the 16th floor with 14 locks on their door. Is it a development or a Colombian Native American? I visited the village, they never saw locks in their life. Who is developed? And this question has to be answered by the people at some point, today, tomorrow, day after tomorrow. But the concept of development has to be revisited if it is to be useful to humanity at large. My 2 cents worth. I don't know whether I answered your question or not, but I think there is a need for this type of thinking. Any other question?
We will take the question from Dr. Abhinandan, please.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, sir. Very informative talk. As you said, you visited the Africa and you observed the most of the and other continent, and you observed that the most of the culture have the similar tradition. As you know, human originated from the Africa and migrated different continent of the world from Africa. So, what do you think? Did they migrated with the culture? That's why there is the similarity between the different culture.
You know, I'll tell
And
you.
if there is any,
I'll tell you a nice
if
story.
there is any impact, is there is any impact of this culture on the human evolution from Neanderthal to Homo sapiens?
I'll tell you a nice story. It has happened in my life. I was in Suriname. Suriname is in South America, and somehow they liked my idea, so they said that we'll have a gathering. So they invited a Native American, an African, a Javanese, and I was there representing the Hindus, and I gave a talk about similarities in African and Hindu traditions. And one big guy, African guy, he was right in front of me. And one of the white guys asked me a question that, Dr. Pathak, you talked so much good about Africa, you never touched any other thing, other side of it. And I told them that, I believe in one philosophy, which is written in a beautiful way in Bharat, that is called Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, Sarve Santu Niramayaha, Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu. So we have to learn to see the positives. If we see the positives around us, we build positives around us. If we see negatives around us, we build negatives around us. And I said that that's why I did not discuss any negatives. And then I made a humorous comment. I said, because the question was asked by the white man, I told him that you have already done enough to put all the negatives in the terms of books and publications and all those things. So I need not say anything about that. The Africans were uprooted from Africa. Almost 18, there is a beautiful book. If you get a chance, you can look at it. It's called African Holocaust. They say that 80 million Africans were transported. And there was a significant resistance by the Africans for this transportation. They died, they jumped in the ocean. And there was a resistance. Nobody talks about this resistance. And they say that Africans were notoriously dharmic in their nature. I don't want to use the term religious because they are not religions. All these ancient traditions are not religion per se as the definition of religion. They are all way of life. They can be easily part of the dharmic culture or Sanatani culture or whatever, but they are way of life. They are not religions. And then once it is a way of life, then you have to practice it. And that's why oral traditions is important, because unless you practice it, it is worthless having 100 books on Vedas and you don't know, you don't practice it. And that is where the challenge comes into the picture. But the Africans were transported and they were uprooted. John Beatty in his book says that, the African behavior changed because they were attached to the environment. They were attached to everything what they were there. And once they were uprooted, they were never went back to that traditional African wisdom and knowledge. And that is why you see challenges about behavior, challenges about things. But we need to understand that if you are uprooted from the system, I'll tell you a very simple thing. You are based in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar and all those things. The people from Uttar Pradesh, Bihar come to Mumbai, and over the period of time, if they don't keep on going back and forth, they change. And that's what happens. Sometimes it is a very high level of change, sometimes a low level of change, but it is different. So Africans in America, I have organized a couple of conferences in Washington, D.C. And there is a very beautiful center called Yoruba Enlightenment and Rejuvenation Center, where they do a lot of African traditional practices, and they are moving. All these things, a day will come and it will turn the whole world upside down. I am very positive about that. It's only a matter of time. And I'm sure, and I never discuss any negative things in my talk. Sorry about that.
Okay.
It's worthless talking about negatives. Okay.
Dr. Pathak, we have
So one very small question. Does a culture survive without belief in God for long term? Without belief in God?
No, they don't have any charvak.
No, sir. My question is that does a culture survive long term without belief in God?
Long?
जो ईश्वर पे विश्वास नहीं करता हो,
हाँ.
ऐसा कोई कल्चर लॉन्ग टर्म सरवाइव कर सकता है क्या? जैसे ह्यूमन की बात करें.
I don't think so, because you need belief somewhere, doesn't matter what. So, I love African traditions because they don't have any question about no belief. We got Charvak in our philosophy who was saying, Yavad jivet sukam jivet trunam krutva gutam pivet basmi bhutasya dehasya kuto punragata. But African traditions had no group which did not believe in God. There was no atheist in these systems. I haven't heard about that, because they were firm believer of God. And they carried the God everywhere, wherever they went, in the school, to a farm, everywhere they go. And they were God-loving people. They were not God-fearing people. There is a difference between God-loving people and God-fearing people. If you are doing bad thing, then you are a God-fearing people. If you are doing always good thing, then you are God-loving people. This is the basic difference. And that's why, without blinking our eyes, in every temple around the world, we say this Sarve Bhavantu Sukhina, because it is a God-loving statement. It is not a God-fearing statement.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Pathak. And Dr. Pankaj Soni has raised his hand. In very short, we have only 1 minute.
Oh.
Now, please ask.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your great talk. I just have one question, because I'm actually unable to, I'm not capable to do that. So it's like a thought experiment, because I know you are from science, so you know that the biggest theory of relativity came from a thought experiment. And I was thinking many times in a way when I was reading about mantras, because the people who invested themselves in mantras too much, they known as mantra drishta, not they're reading कि उन्होंने मंत्र बहुत अच्छे से पढ़े हो, उन्हें याद किया हो, but they called as mantra drishta. So what I want to ask is, suppose there is the knowledge dissemination. Suppose we are putting this tradition to the end, this writing thing, and putting everything on this oral custom. Then do you think again this human going to evolve, his memory is going to evolve? Because as you said, your smartphone is more smarter than a person, because nobody wants to remember anything, even the phone number of their mother or father, because it is just feeded. So if we are eliminating this whole system of writing and disseminating the knowledge on using the paperwork, just besides the language. So how this human knowledge system is going to be like?
Based on your face, I can see you are a millennial. You are born. So I don't think I can convince you about this, because unless you experience it and you work with it, it is impossible. Because people normally ask me that how you remember the names and all those stories of all those things. I'm working for 30 years without iPhone, without iPad, without a computer, and it's still in my heart. So learn to listen to your heart than your heartbeats from the iPhone. Hey, I would like to invite all of you, please go to Dibrugarh University, Dibrugarh. From 20th of January, there is a conference. People from 40 different countries are coming. You will find people who are absolutely very happy without technology. They love it. And I have stayed in many such villages, no locks they have seen. And I think they are good for humanity. So go to Dibrugarh, meet them and find out how they are surviving, how they are reviving, and how, because, don't worry about it. If Apple comes out with something different, your iPhone will be obsolete within no time. And then you will ask me another question. What will be? I'm just joking. Take it easy. Thank you very much, guys. Time is over.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Pathak, and thanks to all for joining today's KSAS talk. And next month, we will come with another topic, another eminent speaker to discuss such beautiful thoughts related to the society for vibrant society. Thank you. Thank you very much. Pranam.
Namaste, everyone. Pranam.
Thank you very much.